Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, yesterday afternoon, my wife and I were talking about how it feels like it's been a long time since we've seen the sun. We live right here in the Midwest, and the map that I made to help prove this is a cumulative downward solar flux anomaly map. Now, what does that mean? Well, where you see these colors, this represents where we've had a lot of cloud cover and not seen a lot of sunshine getting down to the surface. Now, when you think about this map, what I want you to notice is that there are a few regions here, here, and here where we've actually seen an abundant amount of sunshine. And that's very indicative of what the jet stream level pattern is doing. And I'm going to talk to you about that next. Now, over there on the left, that is what the winds are doing at the jet stream level today. And you can see a few very important features, like we'll talk about the storm system that's running through the southern plains into the lower Mississippi River Valley. And this little shortwave right in through here, well, it's going to be the initiator of a low pressure system in the northern plains later on this week. But we do notice that coming all the way through this part of Asia out into the Pacific Ocean, a pretty impressive branch of the polar jet stream here, just screaming in a zonal fashion, which means west to east. And when we look back over the last month, we've seen that quite a bit. Look at this. This is just the last month's 250 millibar winds. So this is jet stream level winds, and they break up across the United States and break up over parts of Europe. That's quite common. But to show you the differences from normal, let's look at this map over here on the right. So the same one's animating on the left, but here's the one on the right. What I want to point out to you is this. The jet stream level winds are relatively far to the south and very strong in through this corridor. And therefore, there must be some brutally cold air that's sitting here over this part of Asia. We can see that, look at this section of the United States. Notice that we anomalously have had weaker winds. And in fact, the anomalies are out of the east into this area. And that's been part of the reason why we've seen a very inactive pattern through the midsection of the country. Not in the southern part, but in the midsection. And over Europe, look at this anomalous circulation sitting right in through this area. I'm going to talk to you more about that in just a few moments here. But first, we can kind of get an idea here about what that jet stream pattern is reflective of, which is the temperature pattern at the surface. And the very cold air that is in this part of Asia has allowed the jet stream to dip pretty far to the south of it before coming out into the Pacific and screaming across the Pacific like this. But we've seen the jet stream pattern break up across North America, allowing for some milder conditions compared to normal in through this part of Canada. Now, before I come back to the U.S., I do want to talk a bit about Europe, because I am expecting quite a bit of change here across much of Europe in terms of its temperature pattern. And that's going to result in a pattern change across the United States at some point in this month or the beginning of February. So let's get into that, okay? Now, certainly over the last several days, you've probably all seen quite a few interesting pictures of the major snows that have been through parts of Spain, like that guy right there trying to pick the snow off of his car. And apparently it's quite heavy here and just squished him there. But this massive storm system that went through parts of Spain here, dumping a tremendous amount of snow. So if we take a look at snow cover across the northern hemisphere, look at how expansive it is across Russia. In fact, it is very difficult to find a place across Russia where there is not snow, except for right in through here, the southern Russian wheat belt. There's the Black Sea. You can see the southern Russian wheat belt. Now, why I'd like to point this out is that over the next week, we are expecting, so here's the Black Sea. This is Ukraine, southern Russian wheat belt. We're expecting a lot of snow to come into this area. And that's going to be critical for that region because in the upper levels of the atmosphere, this is way in the stratosphere, the polar vortex is becoming quite weak and elongated. This is what it looks like today. This is what it's expected to look like by the end of the week, breaking off into two separate pieces. One that's going to be here over this part of Russia, a second that's going to be here just off the southern tip of Greenland. And as a result of that, we are expecting, well, I shouldn't say as a result of that, but there seems to be some connection between that event and a change in the overall pattern across the northern hemisphere. It doesn't seem as though there's a full connection there, but it's something I have to pay attention to because look at this. When you see this map, which is showing you temperatures this upcoming Sunday, we are expecting to come through Ukraine and this part of Russia, temperatures to be down here in the minus 15 to in some locations colder than minus 20 Celsius range. So some brutally cold air coming in here. So without the snow cover, we would have seen major problems with that winter wheat crop that's in this area. So I know I don't cover a lot of international weather in these videos anymore because I do the separate video, especially for South America this time of year, but I wanted to cover that for us. Now, we are still dealing with the remnants of a winter storm that's going to push through the lower Mississippi River Valley today. And if we look down here, we still have widespread winter storm warnings early this morning from parts of Texas all the way to this section of Mississippi. Overnight last night on the radar, we can watch the animation of this low taking shape here, pulling in a lot of Gulf moisture through parts of Louisiana. But on the back side here, we were talking about all snow in that area. Now, this was through 6 p.m. last night. This is total snowfall through the last 6 days. So remember, we did have one system that went through parts of the Appalachian Mountains, putting down in some locations 4 to 8 inches of snow, and some light snow getting here into the Piedmont and the coastal plain, all the way to the coast as well. But the system that went through last night, look at this swath of very heavy snow that was painted from, well, basically Lubbock, south of Lubbock, all the way over here into this part of eastern Texas. And we're expecting that to continue to spread this morning into the lower Mississippi River Valley. So about the time I was recording this, the models were projecting snow spreading into this area. And it was going to be a heavy, wet snow right in through this part of Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and northern Alabama. You're going to notice, though, that as this goes on through 7 a.m. this morning, getting into midday today, we kind of switch over to all rain at that point through parts of Alabama. And then this spreads over into Georgia, North and South Carolina, and the low kind of fizzles out as the wave is really too... It's just not opened up enough in order to get the good upper level divergence out. This, in other words, the curvature effect isn't working too well. But there is a deep low that was circulating around Alaska, the southern tail of it coming through the Pacific Northwest as we get into early morning tomorrow morning. And you can see the heavy rainfall we're expecting in coastal Oregon and Washington and parts of northern California. And that spreads some snow into northern parts of Idaho and even into the Rocky Mountains of Montana. But for the rest of the country, things are relatively quiet until we get to the end of this week. We're actually going to wait for that wave to create another low that's going to come right in through here in the middle, toward the end of the week. Now, to think about what that wave is going to do, I want to come back to a map I've showed you several times. It's the accumulated snowfall departure map. Now, let's go west to east. Remember at the very beginning, I told you about all the sunshine we'd seen in here? That's because we've had a lack of cloud cover associated with a strong subtropical jet stream. And as a result, some places here in the Sierra Nevadas are over 100 inches in deficit of snowfall. We're going to help some of these regions with the flow that's coming in the next couple of days. But throughout the Rockies, we're still sitting in deficit because where the most of our snow has been from this southerly storm track lately that's really hit parts of the southern plains. I do expect some change in this map for North Dakota, parts of Wisconsin, Michigan, but you can also again see how much of a lack of really cold air we've had going across the Great Lakes and this major lake effect snow deficit here. So to see that change coming, let's go over to the European model, and we've already watched through about this point, which is Wednesday morning. Now, here comes the wave through the Pacific Northwest, and what happens is it emerges on Wednesday night into Thursday morning in the northern plains. So southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba, strong winds here, snow blowing out of the north, and it's going to cut into North Dakota. And this low then takes shape over northern Minnesota Thursday afternoon, getting into the evening hours, and then spreads basically into parts of Wisconsin. Now, the models have been moving the position of this low around quite a bit as of late, but we're going to have to watch this all week long because by Friday morning, the pressure gradient around this low is going to be very tight, and this is blizzard conditions on the backside of this. Now, we don't have any blizzard warnings out at this point. It's too far out in advance, but if the model does verify with this, this is some very, very strong winds on the backside of this. So that'll be bringing in the snow. And as we move forward, this is now Friday afternoon and evening, getting into next weekend. This is Saturday and moving into Sunday. Now, if we just step that back over the weekend, we could expect precipitation to spread all the way along the eastern seaboard here for Saturday morning. And then that low cuts through this section of the Great Lakes. And then things go over a little bit more quiet. Some northwest flow coming in through this area, bringing in some scattered snow early next week. But outside of that, we're going to have to wait for this pattern to really make a sizable shift. And I want to talk to you about when I think that shift is going to come. First, do we have much confidence in the development of that low? Well, let's just fast forward all the way out here to basically midnight on Thursday into Friday morning. And the model, there's still considerable spread, but trying to place that low somewhere in this vicinity, that tells me that the animation I just showed you is robust. So we'll keep a close eye on this by the time we get to the end of this week. Total accumulated precip. First system cuts through parts of the southeast. Let's pause it right there. So this is through Wednesday night. Remember, a lot of this here on the northern side is going to be some wet snow, but generally about 0.25 inches, upwards of 3/4 of an inch of rainfall out of this moving over toward North Carolina. Meanwhile, you saw the systems coming into the Pacific Northwest. Letting this continue, you see on Thursday into Friday that the liquid equivalent amounts here for this system coming into the northern plains is going to be over an inch. So we need to see how much snow we're going to get out of it. But no strong subtropical jet stream, drier here where we've been monitoring drought. And overall, cutting all the way here into the eastern Corn Belt, it's not as though we're adding a lot of moisture into this area. So let's take a look at snow. Now, the first map, what we're going to look at here is Operational European 0Z. We're just trying to use this to find the regions of heaviest snow. Now remember, we're going to be overdoing the amounts here because the 10-to-1 ratio doesn't apply and it's going to be a heavy wet snow. But looking up into this area, there is the potential for quite a bit of accumulation later this week. And the probability of getting at least 3 inches of snow out of this forecast, well, we can see this is the system going through this morning. And then you notice the system coming through late this week, Thursday into Friday and Saturday. We're talking about good chances here of picking up some bigger snow. So I'll talk a lot more about it on Thursday as we're watching this system unfold here. But let's come back to where we began. By day 10, do you see a difference from what I showed you at the beginning? The European model ensemble by day 10 now has this as the pattern. Now, do you remember earlier the strongest jet stream winds curled all the way around to here? But now they seem to be kind of backed up from this part of, southern Europe, northern Africa, all the way here just south of the Gulf of Alaska. And we start to see this feature. And from day 10 to day 15, look at where these strong winds are now located. So there's a piece here and then here. Now that's much different from the pattern that I showed you, meaning that the very end of the month of January could see a sizable change in the pattern. And the change, which we talked about last week, is going to be really seen quite well with the development of that ridge. And that's going to give us a downstream trough that's going to cut into the United States. So the week 2 pattern initially starts off dry here for the western United States, but much more active for the central United States going into the end of the month. But before I show you how things are going to transition for that last week of January with precipitation, I want to talk about temperatures first. So today, Monday, the 11th, looking at our high temperatures and departure from normal. The cold air is with the system to the south. We actually have very uniform temperatures in the midsection of the country, but it's much below average here and much above average here in the northern plains. Well, this pattern changes. This is Tuesday's departure from normal. Going into Wednesday, very warm in the plains here. Into Thursday and Friday, and then finally get into the weekend. Now remember, this will be the time period we're going to watch that system moving through this area. So plenty of cold air here to make snow in this system, but it's not connected to a deep pocket of cold air. But I still tell you, we could have blizzard conditions here on the back side of this. Now going days 5 through 10, the European model and the GFS hang on to the cooler air compared to normal in the south. And overall, they have a similar pattern, but the GFS is a bit more aggressive with the colder air initially. But by the time we get to day 10 through 15, which gets us into that last week of January, look at the sizable pattern change that even the European weeklies have been advertising for a while, beginning here in the western part of North America. And this is where we get to at the very end of this. As that establishes, that last week of January should start to push better moisture into the Pacific Northwest, an active pattern in the central part of the United States, including the Ohio River Valley, getting down to the Tennessee Valley all the way to the southeast. So what this tells me is the end of this month, due to that pattern adjustment I showed you in the upper level winds, is going to be quite active. And we're going to feel the full effect of a winter as we press our way from January into February. So that's it. I wanted to share that with you. We're going to watch this update all week. I look forward to talking again about this on Thursday. All right. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you then. Thank you.